what we're launching, there's two different things. First of all, we're launching a pack of 3 illustrated, easy to understand pamphlets, one on European defence policy, one on European social policy, and one on European justice policy. And the second thing we're launching is what we have termed the 6-pack. It's a pack of 6 audiovisual presentations that you see up here, and they're on 6 different areas of EU policy. And they're going to be up on our YouTube website probably as of tomorrow afternoon. So each of them is between 6, 8, 9 minutes. So they're easy to watch and they're a bit of fun, and you'll learn a lot from them. All of these outputs have been produced under a project that we undertook with the support of the European Commission, and which has been running for the last year. So the Minister is firstly going to address you for a few moments, and following this he'll launch the publications, and after that we should have good time for questions and answers. Thank you. Thank you, Minister.
Well, firstly, thanks very much, Jill, for your kind introduction, and just to say I'm delighted to be able to join you here this evening. As you may know, it was meant to be my colleague, Minister Micheál Martin, the Minister for Foreign Affairs, who was meant to join you this evening. But as you know, unfortunate events occurred over the weekend and only last night in Northern Ireland, which has required his total attention, and he's actually in Northern Ireland tonight to meet with our colleagues in the north to discuss these tragic events. I know that everybody here will share with me when we express our unanimous condemnation of those appalling events. But anyway, on to tonight's events. I'd like to compliment you, Jill, and everybody in the IIEA for your initiative in firstly, engaging in European affairs, and for all of those new members and invited guests and people who've come along to the Junior Professional Evening, which is tonight, for your engagement in European affairs. Perhaps there has been never a greater need for young people to be really, really involved in engendering a greater sense of understanding and involvement by young people, especially for reasons I'll explain in a while, in Europe and in European issues. So to one and all of you, I compliment you. I can't say, Jill, that I can speak with any great authority on 6-packs of either variety. I'm not in possession of either one of them, I can assure you of that. But what I can do for a few moments is maybe set out for you and your guests some of the issues which we are working in the Department of Foreign Affairs in relation to Europe this year. As you all know, 2009 will be a hugely important year for Europe, for Ireland in Europe. Some would say it's going to be the defining year for Europe, the European Union and the European institutions since its very foundation in 1957, and will certainly be Ireland's defining year as a member of the European Union, not just because of the issues which have arisen because of the arising out of the Lisbon Treaty, but also because of the fact we're having European-wide elections in June. We're having the appointment of a full new commission later on in the year. These are always very, very important events for the European Union. And I'd like to just set out briefly our agenda for the year. Our agenda is informed mainly by the huge amount of research which we've done over the last 6 months in the immediate aftermath of the Lisbon Treaty result in the country, and huge and very detailed and expensive, I should say, qualitative research on the real in-depth reasons behind people's intentions and reasons for voting as they did last June. And the results of the research which we undertook are very relevant to the IIEA, to your members, but particularly for your launch here tonight. And now, amongst all of the findings, the common thread which came through all of the different areas of research was one single defining feature, and that was the real lack of understanding or lack of knowledge and lack of information which people right throughout the country felt either had or didn't have in relation to the treaty. Now, I don't have to in any way lecture an audience such as you tonight, who have clearly decided of your own volition to engage actively in these issues, but thousands and hundreds of thousands of young people throughout Ireland simply haven't. They perhaps haven't had the capacity that all of you have had, the good fortune of the fabulous education which I'm sure you've had, or the interest or the background or whatever socioeconomic reason there might be for that. There are whole swathes of this country who are not in the position that you are, and it represents an enormous challenge for us as policymakers, but I would respectfully suggest for everybody, for all of you, for everybody engaged in this area. It represents a huge challenge to us all, and it does, in my view, represent a real national challenge to engage the Irish people again, to provide the information so that really, truly informed decisions can be made, to address that deficit of information, which unfortunately is all too prevalent. What we need to do is explain the sort of guarantees that we successfully negotiated with our European partners last September in terms of the Commissioner, which, as you all know, we have agreed, we have succeeded in agreeing unanimously at European level that upon the introduction of the Lisbon Treaty, if it is passed by Ireland, that's a matter of the sovereign right of the Irish people to make that decision, but if it is passed, it has been agreed unanimously by all of our partners in Europe that there will be one commissioner for every country in Europe. That again, through our research, was one of the key reasons which people identified. It was probably one of those, reasons or issues which people, no matter what their backgrounds were, what their real understanding of the referendum was, but it's one thing that certainly caught people's imagination. And despite reservations from many people, and despite the legal imperative which is contained in the existing Nice Treaty, that is now a binding decision of all of Europe, and that will go, we hope, a long way towards addressing concerns. We also are in the process now of negotiating very, very detailed legal guarantees in relation to the other issues which came up in terms of taxation, neutrality, social issues, and so forth, sensitive issues, which either real or imagined had a real effect on the voting patterns of the people. And I'm not saying that people voted for the wrong reasons. The people are sovereign and the people have the right to make the decisions, but we have a duty to make sure that those decisions are fully informed, and where there are concerns, whether real or whether they're founded in reality or otherwise, that those real concerns need to be addressed, and we are working, I can assure you, really intensively with our European partners to do that. And an enormous body of work is being taking place as we speak, and over the next number of months, intensive work to secure those guarantees, which are very, very important. Whatever about securing those guarantees and negotiating them, and we have to remember get them through unanimously through all of our European partners. The job of communicating that then to the wider public audience is again an enormous political hurdle and a public relations hurdle, which I believe the six-pack of the IIEA will have an important role to play in getting that message out. And in order to get our message across more effectively, my colleague Micheál Martin is going to introduce a very comprehensive communications action plan to inform the Irish people in a way that we didn't do so, we freely admit that, in the last referendum, in a comprehensive way, in a fair way, in a way that people can understand. Because all of our research again shows that people who have a greater understanding of it are usually more favourably disposed towards Europe. That's not to say that people who have full understanding of Europe blindly follow Europe. They may make a very informed choice not to support the whole European project, but the research tends to show that people have a real, genuine, well-founded basis of information about Europe tend to support the Lisbon Treaty as it was put a number of months ago. And in that context, Jill, and I'll conclude shortly, it's good to have an occasion such as this to be able to launch the six-pack and to launch and to which is part of your Europe 2.0 whole project, to such an engaged audience that we have here tonight. And people are clearly interested and engaged in the whole European issue. I was reminded when I was speaking to J.P. McManus, who was promoting education for young and disadvantaged people over the weekend in Limerick, when he said that Aristotle once said in one of his famous quotes that the sign of an educated mind is one that is open to other ideas while not necessarily committed to accepting them. And I think that's what we're all about. It's an idea which we on the government side are trying to convince our opposition friends in the dole of the merits of that particular concept, but that'll be put to the test over the next few weeks or so. Can I say to you, Jill, that having looked through and having received a brief presentation on the six-pack, I believe it's innovative. I believe it's made up of attractive materials. I think that it relates to young people in a new way. It's going to be launched on the web. People are now engaging in terms of acquiring information in much different ways than they used to before. And I think that the issues which it addresses in terms of peace and security, European defence policy, which again was embedded in the research, was a real issue of real concern to young people for understandable reasons, but reasons which really didn't form part of the public debate before the Lisbon Treaty, but which, in my view, will really have to form a very important part of the debate we will have in the coming months. And I have to say, and I should say, that obviously all this is completely predicated on the European Union, including Ireland, working with our European partners to get these legally binding guarantees by unanimous agreement with all our partners in a form that is acceptable to Ireland, in a form that we feel that we can present to the people in a way that we feel can address the very real and genuine concerns which came up in the context of a very, very complex debate last June. So in conclusion, I would say to you, Jill, and everybody gathered, that I think forums such as this, where young people are clearly engaged in European issues, are very, very important to get out the message so that people, whether they want to make a decision one way or the other, can do so in a really informed basis using modern techniques of communication. And for that, I communicate you. I congratulate you, the IIEA, and everybody who has come here tonight, and all of your guests. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank Minister Power, first of all, for his very positive comments about our work, and to thank him again for taking the time to come along this evening. I also just want to acknowledge briefly our cameraman here, Brian, who produced the audiovisual presentations. We're just going to have a brief look at one of them, one of the presentations. We have a little snippet of it just for you to see what it involves, and the rest of it you can log on to the YouTube website and check them out for yourself.
Bono or Bjork? If you were in business, who would you prefer to be? To begin with, one is Irish and one is Icelandic. What is the difference between Ireland and Iceland, apart from one letter? Ireland is in the European Union, but Iceland is not. Ireland is part of the single market, which was set up in 1992. Iceland is a member of the European Economic Area. This means that although Iceland can trade in the single market freely, like an EU member state, it has no say in changes to single market rules and laws. Ireland is a decision maker, Iceland is a decision taker. If a foreign company wants to create a European headquarters, Ireland is an attractive candidate, as it is part of a union of 26 other countries. Each of them is a gateway to an enormous market of 513 million consumers. Irish companies can benefit from economies of scale by having such a huge market at their disposal. So if a music album is produced in Ireland, it can be exported to 26 other countries in the European Union without having to pay any additional costs. Iceland is not as attractive for foreign direct investment because the Icelandic government cannot change or influence single market regulations, nor has it the voice and influence from which Ireland benefits as an EU member state. Irish companies can also sign up for the European Company Statute, which gives companies the option of forming a European company, an advantage not available to Icelandic companies. And should there be a European scheme to bail out certain member states who are struggling to pay their debts, Ireland would qualify, but Iceland would not. Although there are huge advantages to the single market, some barriers still do remain. Most firms believe that these are due, at least in part, to the manner in which rules and regulations are applied. Many of the obstacles are related to compliance with national specifications for goods and services, VAT systems, and discriminatory behaviour by public authorities. However, the consensus seems to be that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. Only members of the EU can be in the Eurozone. Overall, there are 16 Eurozone members. Being part of the Eurozone means that monetary policy, for example interest rates, are decided by the European Central Bank, which is based in Frankfurt and is headed by its president, Jean-Claude Trichet, and which is independent of the political influence of the member states. Ireland is represented at the ECB's Committee of Central Bankers by the Governor of the Irish Central Bank, John Hurley. The ECB's control of monetary policy has no effect on the country's government spending or on its power to determine tax rates. These are issues for the Irish government to decide. In the ECB, Ireland has the same voting weight as France and Germany. Foreign investors also favour Ireland having the euro, as currency fluctuations are not such an important issue with exchange rate certainty. Recently, the president of the ECB, Jean-Claude Trichet, said the financial crisis is demonstrating that in turbulent waters it is better to be in a large, solid and steady ship rather than on a small vessel. The large ship that is the EU offers us low interest and inflation rates in these challenging times, meaning that there is still a positive business environment. Iceland is now attempting to join the and the Eurozone as it wants to be part of the larger ship.
So that's just brief.